Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I've been privileged to been career coach to many people who are in a position to hire, and many of them have told me that some of the best advice I've given them has been in hiring wisely, because, as many of you know, that's maybe the most important decision that a manager or a leader makes, both because it's key to their organization, for-profit or non-profit, doing well, and because ever more it's very difficult to terminate an employee who's unsatisfactory. Not only does it take a huge toll on you, the employer, but the coworkers, it's very dispiriting as well. So I thought I'd make a short video. I really think that hiring wisely is much simpler than people realize, but most people, I don't think, do it very well. So here's my best shot for what it's worth. The first thing is, unfortunately, and because I've also been a career counselor to a lot of people who are applying for jobs, and it's dispiriting how in many job seekers' desperation, and the weaker ones especially, they will go to, they kind of check their ethics at the door, and they will, I'm not going to mention the specifics, but there is a whole host of things they can do to make themselves look a lot better than they actually turn out to be on the job. And so, because of that, I'd urge employers to not post ads publicly unless they really have to, and certainly not rely on that as their main source of employers, because there's so much games playing that job seekers make. And so I urge you, rather, when you're hiring, for at least for any kind of an important position, to email all of your trusted colleagues and friends with the job description, asking for a referral for somebody excellent. Because generally, those people will be vetting potential candidates for you, and not somebody who's a clearly, let's just say, weak candidate. So that's the key thing. Really try to cast a wide net using your referral network. Second thing is, when you get applicants, you don't have the time or usually inclination to interview more than 3 or 4 people, and they all get confusing with each other after a while. There's no need to do that. What I encourage you to do is to create a small little test, a little quiz that you would post, that you would email to the applicants, that consists of, it can even be multiple choice, but maybe 5 or 10 questions that test the candidate's ability to handle common yet difficult tasks that they will occur on the job, that they will encounter on the job. Now, of course, they could hire a hired gun. There's no guarantees, but it's a useful screening mechanism. If somebody does poorly on that, that suggests that they may not be worthy of being interviewed. Then when you get them in, and you might point out, to avoid getting them using a hired gun to answer the questions, tell them that they'll be taking a parallel quiz when they come in for, if they're selected for an interview. So anyway, do that. And then when they do come in, the first thing they should do is get a parallel kind of an exam, maybe a little more thorough. But you don't want to be. I really don't like when employers are too invasive and too demanding of job seekers. Put them through 5 interviews and long simulations. You can get a real good idea in a 10-minute or 15-minute quiz. And that way you're not creating enmity. There have been many good candidates who say, you know what, if the employer is treating me this poorly at this point, before they even have me, they'll probably even be worse when I'm hired. So don't put your candidates through too much. And especially because you're not just placing an open ad, you're relying on your referrals. You don't need to do more than usually, that little quiz at home, a little quiz in the when they come in for interviews, and then maybe 2 rounds of interviews, 1 or 2 depending upon your situation, and then a great reference check. Now the key is, in the interviews, I urge you to avoid asking the stock questions. Tell me your greatest strength and greatest weakness. Tell me something about yourself. Too often, the weaker the candidate, the more they feel the need to be coached in that, and they've got a perfectly primed little answer. That's not going to help you determine who the best employee is going to be. It's more likely to help you determine who the most prepared for an interview the person is. So I'd rather simply have you go through their resume and ask them questions about the major accomplishments that they cite in their resume, but probe deeply. Don't just accept their first answer. Well, you start by saying, well, tell me about this. You say you saved the company $9 zillion in this job. Tell me what you actually did. And then when they give you an answer, probe a little deeply. Tell me a little more. How did you make that decision? That can give you a real sense of what they're really like in the trenches. Then in addition, you want to give them some simulations. Again, not a lot, just 1 or 2 simulations, again, of common tasks that they would have to do on the job. So if they're going to be running meetings, you pretend that you say, okay, you're running a 5-minute, one agenda item on a meeting. How, and the 3 of us interview, maybe there are group interviews. So, let's say there are three of the interviewers. Make believe you're running this meeting, and the issue is to have a discussion, a brainstorming discussion about how to proceed to streamline our difficult process in supply chain or whatever. And then that's a really nice simulation that gives you a chance to really see what the person is like on the job. And there's no question about that being relevant to the job, and is quite litigation proof, or let's just say litigation resistance. Nothing is litigation proof anymore. Then when it comes time to the final candidate or two, I have a very unconventional recommendation for how to check references. As somebody who's also been career coach to many job seekers, the more desperate they are, the more, I'll just say tricks. I don't want to say what they are because then the listeners would use them. The more tricks they could use to avoid the employer getting legitimate references on them. So what I urge you to do is to ask the final candidate, 1, maybe 2, no more candidate than that, for a list of, would you believe, 5 or 8 or 10, some large number of references. There's no magic number, but some, not 1 or 2, and then with their phone numbers. And I want you to phone them after hours when they're not going to be picking up their phone. And you're going to leave the following voice message. You say, "Hi, I'm Marty Nemko. I'm going to be hiring a very important position. Let's just say, customer service manager or whatever it is, fundraising director. And Mary Jones is one of the candidates who I'm seriously considering. If you think she's a wonderful candidate, she'd be really good at managing the database, and she'd do very well in trying to close fat cat donors or whatever, I welcome you calling back. If you don't feel she'd be excellent, no need to call back at all." What that does is, most people are very afraid for legal or ethical reasons, or they're simply shy to say anything bad about a person. But it's really, they're much more willing to simply not call back. So if you've, let's say, asked for a half a dozen, each that finalist candidate for a half a dozen references, and only 1 or 2 call back, that's a bad sign. You wouldn't expect all 6 to call back, but at least 3 or 4, that's a sign that they're pretty good. And that's a more valid way to get a reference. And then the 3 to call back, you can ask them more questions to get a better sense of what that person's personality, work style, strengths, weaknesses, etc. But that's it in a nutshell. And one other little tip. At the end of the interview, both because it's human and also can be very revealing, I encourage you to walk the candidate back to their car. Because what happens is, after the interview's over, they're more likely to be relaxed and let their hair down and be more candid. So as you're walking down to the car, you may learn a lot of things about them that you otherwise wouldn't know that are important. And even sometimes, and this, I'm a little dubious about this, I guess I'll shut up, I won't say it. Those are my best thoughts on how to hire smart, how to hire wisely, and which can do more to enhance a manager or leader's career, and as well as do well for the co-workers who will feel good about having good people working for them, than almost anything else you can do. Anyway, that's my advice. I'm Marty Nemko.